Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson. We have a little bit of a different episode today. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking to a lot of different photographic experts. Today, we are going to have a little bit of a conversation with two YouTube folks, Sean Tucker, who many of you may know, and Alex Kilbee, who is the host of the Photographic Eye. And we have had discussions with photographers that you may see here on the channel. And we also took a couple of minutes to talk about critique and the importance of photographic review and sharing your art, your artwork, your photography with others. Here's that conversation. It was a good discussion. One of the things that I thought would be really interesting to do is just have a conversation real briefly about like what the importance of getting feedback from other people. You know, I know, so one of the things that I'm a little, not obsessed, but you know, Vivian Maier for me, not the world's greatest photographer. And I know, Alex, you've done a video on her. She, you know, she's not a great photographer, but she's a person, she was completely independent. You know, she went through and spent her life taking photographs and never, to my knowledge, got comment and feedback and review and people editing and thinking about and telling her go in this direction or think about this. And it just strikes me that the work that she did was done completely without that. And you think about Richard Avedon and Irving Penn, you know, they've got teams of people and editors and publishers who are all helping out with sort of get their work out. Not to say that there's, you know, but it just strikes me that those people have help. And a lot of people out there that that I know don't have the ability to put their work out and to get input and to get the feedback that we're talking about right here. I mean, you guys have spent part of your careers doing, you know, giving information to people, you know, and thank you for doing that because your shows are just amazing. But what I want to try to do is get people to know. Put your work out there, show it to people, listen to what people have to say. How important is that?
A lot of people are just scared, man. That's, you know, I think, I don't know, Sean, if you feel the same way, but yeah, I feel certainly the noises that come back to me about, you know, people who have had, want to do critiques or have mentorship or whatever, is that the common theme is that a lot of them are they're worried about what people will say, right? Putting it online, I think, is one thing because it is a somewhat anonymous-ish. There's a divorce. You're not physically having somebody talk to you about your work. But when it comes to that, when that leap to getting one-to-one feedback or something, that yeah, a lot of people, especially new photographers, they're worried about people being brutish, might be the best word, about their work. And because they hear stories, they talk to people who go, oh, I had this mentor and he was just, you know, he was such a nasty person. He just tore strips off my work. And yeah, I think the reason why, certainly in Sean's, you know, case, as an outsider watching the videos, because I've been watching your channel for a while, Sean, is, you know, that it was less kind of like do it like me and more like find your path. And I think this comes back from your sort of your pastor background, you know, sort of church thing. So I meant to ask, given that you travel around, do you come from a sort of a missionary sort of traveling pastoral sort of thing background?
No. My stepdad was the Barclays bank manager, so 3 years in the post.
So
my family are diehard atheists.
Okay, I thought
they were horrified when I went into the church.
Yeah. But that sort of, but it's that thing, right? So if somebody, like, you know, Sean, if you were still involved in the church, you know, if somebody comes to you with a problem, you don't say, okay, well then you need to be like me, right? Be like, you know, Priest Sean. It's about, okay, we'll discuss this. And I think that's kind of, if you can stress that, people, because people who want to come to your channel, Jeff, if you say to them, this is not about making a clone of me or Sean or whoever else is on there, it's about finding your own voice, about speaking in your own language.
Right. Well, and that's why I have two reviewers on, because I don't have the voice of authority. Now I have two people, like the two of you saw two photographers and had differing thoughts about some of them. So Sean, talk a little bit about what's your experience growing up as a photographer, and how, did you show your work? Was that important to you, or did you operate completely independently?
I really struggle to find good feedback. I mean, for like proper critique stuff. I don't think I had a friend who was kind of a few years ahead of me with photography. He was very helpful because he knew more than I did, and I knew that, but I also knew he cared about my journey. So he wasn't just saying mean things to say mean things. I knew he wanted me to get better. And that intention is everything. It's that Roosevelt quote, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. It's that you can say anything to me if I know you give a shit and you really want me to get better. So he was that for me. Like he could say anything, and he did, and it helped. It really helped. But I think the problem with the internet and getting feedback from strangers is you don't know if they know what they're talking about. One, that's the one big thing, and often the most vitriolic comments you'll get are from people. I mean, I've said on my channel before, like you'll never find a talented troll. Like I've never had someone leave a super mean comment and I've clicked through to their work and been blown away by the quality. It's usually frustrated creatives who don't feel like they're getting anywhere and are just starting out and want attention. They're angry about it. So, you can tune that kind of stuff out straight away. It's not critique. It's not helpful. That you have to know that they know what they're talking about. And then you have to know they care, like that they have your best interests at heart. They're not trying to show off about how great they are, or you do it differently from me, so you're doing it wrong, that their heart's in the right place. I think if you can find those things, it's great. But I've struggled to find that, honestly. I think a lot of people do.
You told a story, I think, at one point on the show where you took a body of work into a printer and had it printed. Can you tell that? Because I think that changed the direction of your work, I think.
Yeah, I'd gone to Namibia to do portraits with the Himba tribe, who are fascinating looking people. And it was because I love photographers like Steve McCurry, and I love Joey L's personal work he does with the Omo Valley tribes or holy men on the banks of the Ganges. And I wanted to do this kind of environmental portraiture with very interesting people, kind of strobe and ambient mix. And I shot images that I was quite proud of technically. And I took them back to London to Genesis Imaging, who do a lot of the printing for the Magnum guys. Like they know their stuff. And the creative director was helping me print these images. They were coming off the production line. And I asked him, what do you think? Which I don't often do, actually. But I knew he knew what he was talking about again. Like, so it was worth asking in that moment. And he said, yeah, they're technically very good images. And I don't care about them at all, I'm afraid, because they're photographs of really interesting looking people that don't tell me anything. And I don't feel you have a connection with this stuff. And he was 100% right. And he wasn't being mean saying it, but that helped me take the next stage, which is where I went back to South Africa to photograph a very little portrait series with 3 mentors of mine, people who meant something to me. So it wasn't me going out and just finding culturally interesting looking people that I had no connection to and no real idea of what story I wanted to tell. I just knew they translate well in photographs. They were good photographs because of how interesting they were in technically good photographs, not how great my photography was. And there's a distinction. But then going back and photographing really simple photographs with my 3 mentors, those images were much more powerful because of my connection with them, even though they were technically simpler. And his very direct comment got me there.
Yeah. And you did a video about that. I remember you talking about the video, and I remember seeing you used to do your show with some of those portraits behind you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Who were your mentors?
Well, not photography mentors, just to be clear. Like they were. I mean, my dad left home when I was quite young. So these were guys who sort of in my teens and 20s saw a guy who was just floundering on how do you become a man in this modern era, and they
Yeah,
sort
yeah,
of took me
yeah.
under their
Okay.
wing at different points. So that's why they meant something to me.
Oh, okay. So
And it-
yeah, so mentioned in a broader
yeah.
sense.
So then
Okay. Yeah. Oh,
photograph, and it was
yeah,
more
it
to
is
do with it.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because you know what you sort of say about, you know, it's a connection and caring, and I think, you know, going back to the whole thing about online, is everybody wants to show, they want to show how much they know.
Mhm.
So they will pick apart something and go, oh, well, you see, that's wrong, because all they want is somebody to go, oh, look how much that person knows.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not, you know, they're not going to get into the, you know, the more airy fairy points of critique, because it doesn't make them look good. And that's, you know, so that's all the online critique that doesn't involve a connection with somebody, the person giving the you know, the feedback, boils down to.
So Alex, you
And
in the,
unfortunately,
I'm sorry, go finish your thought. I apologize.
oh no, it's fine. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that. So in the videos that we did, we linked out to what photo school should have taught photographers. And you trained, you went to school, to photo school. And in that process, I would assume, I didn't go to photo school because I'm a hack, but you had fairly regular critique and review of the images that
Yeah.
right?
So broadly speaking, so this kind of roughly what would happen is that the photo school is broken down into a number of segments. Okay, so there was technical, there was theory. So this was about how light works and lighting, not lighting ratios per se, but, you know, color, temperature, and chemistry and all that sort of crap. There was visual communication, and then there was practical. So the practical was obviously the actual taking photographs part of things. And we would get an assignment, I think it was maybe 2 a month, where they would say, well, we want you to go photograph a bottle, or we want you to go and do some pictures of children, or, you know, some arbitrary thing. And then you would have a month or 2 weeks to work on those. So I would spend, you know, maybe 10 days playing pool at McCoy's, and then the last half an hour doing the assignment. And then yes, you would critique. So we would go into the room and we'd put up prints up on the wall, and then, you know, the lecturer would be there and go blah 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 blah. I don't like this. I like that. That's pretty cool. And then it would be thrown open to the floor, and you know, and 20-year-old students, especially art students, don't hold back. You know, they will be like, I don't like this, and I don't like that. And it's like, and all the people who are online thinking that, oh, I don't want, you know, that people are just going to say nasty stuff about my work, when it's one of your contemporaries in the same room as you who takes one of your prints that you've left by the color printer that's been span out and pins it up on the wall with, what is this shit, co-keyed on it, so it's like marker pen, right? That's nasty feedback. Saying that you don't understand exposure or something like that is not nasty feedback. And it gives you, but it also, in the same way, it does teach you that, you know, you have to balance it all out in the end. That you can do that. You can say, what is this shit? So long as you go, well, maybe this is something you should consider next time. You know, the lighting on that particular image was just flat and dull and blah. So there was no mood to it. And it was David Ross being a knob, but but it kind of, you know, it's that sort of thing. That was what was going on. So that's kind of, and I there must be a way of being able to tap into that kind of back and forth in the modern world, but I how it would work, I don't know. I've yet to find it.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I mean, this first of all, thank you for staying on for a couple of minutes more. I'll let you get to your weekend
it's
now.
fine.
But so, I mean, this is so important to me because I spent 30 years just wandering the streets of Boston, taking pictures. I didn't show it to anybody. I mean, it sat in physical boxes, and then it sat in hard drives once I moved over to digital. And it wasn't until I took an atelier class at a local museum here, the Griffith Museum in Boston, and we sat down and we talked about the images that I started to realize, this is really important. And so that's the genesis behind doing the Crit House. You know, because everything changed at that point.
Yeah. Ultimately, you know, to cycle right back to the beginning of the conversation about Vivian, you know, I'm not a huge fan of her work, but obviously we don't, you know, people have accused me of putting words in her mouth and things. How do you know what she's thinking? It was evident that she's a solitary person, right? And I think there is a misconception that one could only improve by having feedback with other people. Right. So solitary people by their nature are solitary. They're happy to focus in on things. And now Vivian and other people who do improve have a quality which a lot of people don't, which is a willingness to learn, a willingness to get better. Right. I think if you laid all of Vivian's work out end to end in chronological order, you would see it improve. We obviously only see the greatest hits, which is always a problem with looking at photographers whose work has been a complete body, that people cherry pick the bits. You know, so she may have spent hours in the library looking at monographs. She may have been subscribed to Aperture magazine. You know, there's all these kind of things that we don't know that are influencing her. And she not to forget, she lived in a time when there were profoundly influential photographers operating and working and sharing their thoughts, you know, Minor White and Aperture magazine and all that kind of stuff. And if she's interested in photography, she would have been open to all that sort of stuff.
100%. And I agree with that. And there's, you know, my interest in photography started when somebody told me to look at André Cortège and Henri Cartier-Bresson. And I, you know, that changed my life as well. But having someone like the circumstance where Sean did, where somebody came in and said, you know, this doesn't work for me. I'm not sure Vivian did. I mean, maybe she did. I don't know. I haven't like watched the movie or read the books, and you know, so I just you know, have this idea she was on her own, and that she didn't get the input and the feedback that you get from having a community of people talking about your work and giving you feedback on that. Well, you guys go off and enjoy your weekend, and I'm in your debt for participating here on the program. I greatly appreciate it.
No, the pleasure's all mine. And Sean, nice to finally meet you.
You too, dude, yeah.
I think if certain members of my audience knew that we'd been in the same Zoom call together, the internet would explode.